Sometimes to truly make a change, you have to do something big, something dramatic, and something that ensures that you never go back to the emotional and physical traps that have made you so unhappy. One of the best days of my life was the day I smashed my scale. I loved it so much, I think we should all do it. And to make rejecting diet culture even more exciting, I'm giving away free advice and prizes, including a full year of body kindness coaching with me. So to join, visit bodykindnessbook.com/BK Scale Smash. That's bodykindnessbook.com/BK Scale Smash. There you give your name and email and you'll get the motivational coaching from me. Lots of ideas for how you can participate right there on the page. And I look forward to joining you all summer long while we work together to just tell the world that we don't need scales, we don't need judgment, we don't need criticism. What we need is body kindness. Because real health is about being good to yourself, it's time for Body Kindness, the place where all bodies fit and weight is just a number. Hi, I'm Rebecca Scritchfield, author of the book Body Kindness, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and host of this podcast. My topic today is bringing body kindness in the family, and in particular, the immediate family. As parents, I think that we have a very interesting role to play in shaping the future of our kids. And the reality of it is we don't really control when we run into body kindness, when we realize it's time to reject dieting. We may already be parents. We may be expecting our first child. We may be planning a family. We may have kids who are in middle school or high school. And the point of it is that you never know when you're going to be ready for this journey. But as soon as you are aware, you start to realize really quickly that you have an important role to play in shaping your children, no matter what age they are. And so I think it's time that we talk about some specific ways that parents and families can build body kindness together and learn and grow. And we're going to have a specific focus more on people who are planning families and have young children, babies, toddlers, maybe through about preschool or so, but you never know, we might get into those older kids as well. My special guest to discuss this today is Leslie Schilling, who is also a very good personal friend of mine. Leslie is the co-author of the new book, Born to Eat. Through her years as a dietitian and nutrition expert, Leslie has practiced in many settings, including infant nutrition, general pediatrics, and children with special healthcare needs. In addition, she focuses her own private practice on counseling families, those of all ages with disordered eating issues, and professional athletes and performers. With her warm, compassionate, and entertaining personality, Leslie has been featured in Women's Health, BuzzFeed, the Huffington Post, USNews, and HGTV. She is also the co-founder of RDs for Body Confidence, a non-diet and healthy body image initiative for registered dietitians and nutrition students throughout North America. She owns Schilling Nutrition, a private nutrition and wellness coaching business, and an online dinner menu planning service. When she's not counseling, writing, cooking, or hanging out with her family, you can find Leslie using her social media channels and speaking platforms to deliver science-based, non-diet lifestyle and wellness messages with a dash of humor. I just have to add a little bit more than a dash. Leslie, I'm so glad to have you on the show today, and you are one of my funniest friends. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on the Body Kindness podcast.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive in with you. So we can get started, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself and your background so they can get to know you better?
Okay, well, the draw is Carolina. When I'm speaking, most people will ask, where are you from? And so I currently live in Las Vegas, Nevada. I've been here about a year now, and that was a big move from Memphis, Tennessee, where I lived for about 15 years, but I grew up in North Carolina. So I'm a Carolina girl, and the draw is Carolina. But I grew up in a normally dieting family, which I say normally because that's pretty much what everybody of that generation did. And it was considered very healthy at the time and, doing the right thing. So I ended up with some thoughts and behaviors of my own that I thought were normal and common and weren't. And then, long story short, I went to school and ended up in nutrition. And I had been a competitive gymnast, and so one day before botany class, I decided I wasn't going to take botany, ended up in nutrition, and then the rest.
I'm over the plants.
I was like, and I heard the professor does multiple choice, like all the way to F. So I think I'll take something else this semester. So I took nutrition, and I had a great professor and influence, Dr. Diane Butterworth. She had her office window lined with syrup bottles. It was funny. And then it kind of just all clicked that, I had been a competitive athlete for most of my life, or at least competitive. And it just made sense. And then I ended up starting in sports nutrition. And I did sports nutrition and pediatric research at the University of Memphis. For my first job, it was all, I worked in a research lab. I ran a DEXA. I did study protocols and nutrition stuff for research there. And then ended up at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center after that and worked with children with special health care needs. And then I moved on to a quick stint in a consulting group and decided that in order to practice the way I felt was the best way to practice, I needed to do it on my own. And I left. And shortly after that, I met you in a pool with margarita.
I was hoping you would get to that. So yeah. So that was years ago. Do you remember what year that was?
I want to say that was 2008 or 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, we could say over a decade ago or close to a decade ago. Where's my math skills? I was told there'd be no math on this podcast. So that was a really interesting story. So we were at the Leadership Institute, which at the time was actually an in-person meeting for, I guess, future nutrition leaders, and to kind of get inspiration, information, all that stuff. And we ended up, what city were we in?
We were in Dallas.
Oh, Dallas. Okay.
Yeah, right outside of Dallas.
Okay. I don't know. I remember as I brought my bathing suit, there was a pool. And at some point I was like, I'm kind of done being in the stuffy hotel room. I'm going to the pool. And like magic, I take my fruity drink to the pool and bump into Winnie Joe, and we're chatting. And then all of a sudden you come walking by. So what was going on in your head?
I was like, okay, so we're supposed to be journaling in our quiet time about everything we learned, and I'm at the pool with a drink, and these two girls are at the pool with a drink. Okay, these are my people. So I'm like, hey, I'm Leslie, and the rest is history. So
I remember your sunglasses. I was like, I like this girl. She's chilling. Yeah. And yeah, we just kind of chatted. And I mean, interestingly, we were all, me, you and Wendy were all the same age or similar age, and just similar places in career. I mean, it was like the glove that fits, like Cinderella's slipper. This is the glass slipper that fits. Like everything just clicked, like boom, 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 boom.
Totally. And I think from there we formed our mastermind group. Like, it's like, this is the one, I know it. Let's just go ahead and start dating. But we started our mastermind group right then. And there you go.
Yeah. And you were really helpful to me personally, because I was definitely picking up on the non-diet information and trying and learning about intuitive eating and figuring all of that stuff out. But you had such a rich history in helping people who struggled with eating disorders, and I literally knew nothing. And you were just such an important person to kind of make me feel comfortable that I could learn and grow in that area, and help me understand the importance and value of doing work with people who are struggling with disordered eating and eating disorders, and really seeing dieting and all the diet culture stuff as disordered. And I was like, yes. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just like, I like to talk. So I tell everybody about like what an illusion dieting is, and whoever will listen, and you listen that day. You already
I'm
knew.
just gonna like those street performers. I'll just see who stops by and watches. We'll just stand on the street and talk about how bad dieting is and see who shows up to listen and blah blah blah. No, well, yeah, and I feel like you and I have a really similar past. So I wasn't a competitive athlete, but definitely dieting family. And so, but in your family, I think it was more about like, well, like you said, it was normalized. Mm-hmm. But like, it was like the value on appearance, right? So was your family like thin and trying to stay thin, or did they have, because in my family, it was big weight fluctuations, going on and off diets, like overeating and restricting, and just these big cycles of chaos.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember my parents, both of my parents, thinking dieting was the healthy thing. They didn't separate it. They just thought if you were thin, you were healthy. And if we weren't thin or whatever the case was, then okay, if you want to diet, we'll do whatever you need to support that. And, my grandmother was a lifelong dieter. I have to this day her lifetime membership Weight Watchers book. And she was tall, and her goal weight was ridiculous. And I just remember, going to visit my grandmother, and she was a nurse, and I wanted to be healthy like her because she was super active and healthy. And then I realized that kind of her view of health, looking back, dry toast and a grapefruit after a 4-mile walk. And my friend and I would be like, ooh, let's do whatever Nanny does. And we did. And it was really this pursuit of just being healthy and like her, which is really kind of my first view of the generational impact of dieting.
Yeah. And that's a good point, right? In this idea of, what we're talking about today and bringing body kindness in the families is knowing that who is around you, what they're saying, what they're doing, even if they don't intend it to impact you, is going to impact you. So there were things going on when you were coming up that impacted you, right? Even if they didn't think, they might not have even thought that you could see it. It just, we're sponges when we're younger, right? We absorb this.
And going back to what you were saying earlier is talking about, at what point in your life do you need to accept body kindness? And I think from a kid's perspective, there may be people listening that are like, well, I don't have kids, and, that's not really important to me. But so just the other day, I had a new babysitter, and she made some food comments. And so what I realized is, regardless of your relationship with the child, if you are an influence in their life, it's time to really embrace body kindness and the non-diet approach.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I'm glad you brought that up, because if your life in any way touches, a child's life, a teen's life, somebody who looks up to you, even if you still have work to do, right? Because how people ask, when's the work going to be done? And we're like, when you're dead, basically, like the work is never really done. Just changes shape, But you can be wherever you are, but to be aware that words matter, actions matter. And to, even if you're not 100% sure how, in your confidence and how you're taking care of yourself, or you're at the beginning or the middle of, breaking up with diets or learning body kindness, that doesn't matter. You can still choose to model what you think is a better direction, at least when you're around younger folks.
And I think, something that really gets people's attention is, think about, like, right now, I think my little girl thinks I am the bee's knees. Like, I am the most beautiful thing in the world. I'm the strongest mommy in the world. That's amazing. And for me to say something negative about my own body and to crush in her mind something that's beautiful, if I'm the most beautiful thing in the world to her, then what is she if I'm not? And so I think it's really important this is a time where moms and dads and babysitters and aunts and uncles and grandmothers and whoever, this is a time where you might have to fake it till you make it. I don't care if you believe that you're the most beautiful thing in the world, but that child does. And by you not really owning that for them, changes how they view themselves. If you are their model of what love and beauty or whatever, it's really important to own it, whether you think you deserve it or not, until you do.
I love that. You know what it reminds me of is the values-driven goals in body kindness, where you complete the sentence, I want to be the kind of person who fill in the blank. Right? And so you could think about that. If you're struggling and you're concerned about your habits and your behaviors around kids, finish that sentence. I want to be the kind of person who blank, and think about the action you would take if you were in a better place.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, it's like if we all live in this culture, and we none of us wake up and think, I am the hottest thing on this planet today. I mean, maybe every once in a while we do, but there are days where you just don't feel the greatest. And that might be the day that my little girl slaps me on the butt and says something about my butt. And we have already started like, I don't know what, is going on here, but we are like the best booty family. I'm like, your booty's awesome. My booty's awesome. Let's do booty dance. And like we just make up crazy stuff about how we're unique and, we have the best booties or legs or whatever it may be, but really trying to only go in the positive route about your body and really embracing the fact that we're all unique, and my booty looks different than her booty, and this booty looks different than that booty. I mean, I don't want her going around looking at everybody's booty, but that's just an example.
Well, it's a part of body appreciation. Let's kind of complete the story. So we did the masterminding, basically like phone calls. What are you doing? What are you doing? Help each other out, which this was before kids. This was, like earlier in our careers in the private practice setting. And I remember we did a retreat, and it was just so funny. Like, there's so many certain things. Like, you made the most amazing pasta puttanesca I've ever had in my life. And like, you guys were like, I can't believe you haven't sent that invoice in a month. Like, we're not leaving until you open up your computer and send that one invoice. It was so helpful, like hot tub conversations. I'm so glad we took that time when we had it. And one of the things that we did is we also worked on vision boards, and was so interesting on all three of ours when we talked about personal. We all had pictures of a baby or baby feet. Like, we all kind of claimed we see ourselves becoming mothers. And I think that really influenced a lot of things, because we've had, made it through difficult experiences and difficult body image issues, or we're working our way through that. And then it's like, you imagine becoming a mom yourself, and it feels scary. I know we've often talked about this idea of like breaking the chain, right? Like, do not, even though it's likely, if I don't make changes, it's likely to pass stuff on, but that doesn't have to be my destiny. So talk to me a little bit about your becoming a mother.
Well, that was interesting. we were actually, I think we were at a conference in San Diego, and shortly after that, a month or two, I found out that I was pregnant. And I remember my doctor saying, well, you're not getting any younger. So if you're going to do it, you should do it. And then, one thing after another, I'm pregnant. I have a practice. I have employees. And then I end up in the hospital on bed rest for 42 days. But who's counting? It was a long time.
I couldn't even watch 42 days of TV, or like all those things, we say that we do if we had more time, and we never do. I couldn't even do that for 42 days, whatever it was. So you get the award just for sheer determination.
I think but that was kind of my first, it was my first like motherly role where I really had to step outside myself and do what I had to do for her. And it was kind of forced upon me. It was not a fun situation. There were a lot of difficulties, but looking back, it was such a valuable lesson in my life that I had to be kind to myself then and realize that this business I had and these clients that I had and this employee that I had working with me, that they were going to make it without me because I was busy working on myself and, trying to stay pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so clearly if someone's in the hospital with a baby for 40 some days, it's a crisis situation. So you were in a traumatic event.
Yeah, it was interesting. So I had preterm labor and they stopped it, but there were a lot of complications with the medications that they used and I was in the hospital for 2 weeks and then home for a couple of days and then ended up having to go back. And, like in the therapy world, they talk about like big T trauma and little T traumas. And it was like for me, it was like, wow, this is my experience with a bunch of little T's, like strung together over the course of that time. But again, it was one of those examples one of those things that you would not choose for yourself, but you look back and you see, wow, what a valuable lesson that was. It was forced self-care because I was working like a crazy person. I had 10 weeks left and I was like, I figured out like how much money I'm going to save. I figured out what I'm going to do and I'm do this. And it was this perfect plan that just crashed and taught me a beautiful lesson. Mm-hmm. That I would not have learned on my own.
On your own. Yeah. If it was easy peasy, easy going, and like you wouldn't have been. It was like there was a higher power at hand and saying she needs to go through this experience to learn and grow and to gain perspective.
And that's so true. And I've actually written a talk about this, and where I remember like a couple of days before or a week or two before where I remember asking myself in prayer, like, what is it going to take? What is it going to take for me to be able to not work like a crazy person and be more kind to my body and myself and, retire my inner perfectionist. And so note to self, don't ever pray for patience or ask, what is it going to take? Because you'll find out. So
do you want to talk about your nickname for yourself?
Sure. Sure. So I think I was 8 or 9. I can't remember. And I locked myself in my room and I'm still investigating the reason behind this. You never get the honest answer. I don't think when I'm investigating this, but I locked myself in the room and I wouldn't come out for like a day. And I wrote on a piece of paper that my mom kept, and I have it to this day, that says Leslie A. Nobody. And I taped it to my bedroom door and wouldn't come out. And I didn't realize it until about 20 years later that Leslie A. Nobody had been driving my bus as a perfectionist. And, achievement was my idol. And sometimes that meant my self-care didn't happen at all. And when achievement is your idol, even working out and eating well, it's not self-care, it's achievement. And so I think some of the beginning into my crazy journey, being a mom, really helped me put a lot of things in perspective about my lifestyle and my addiction to achievement.
Mm-hmm. That's so important. Thank you for sharing that. It really is a powerful story. It's helped me personally, and I just know it will help listeners, who understand. They often feel alone in their low self-esteem and their low sense of self-worth. And, it's you can't have high self-compassion when you have such low sense of self-worth.
True. And not good enoughness. And I think what I told you, I'm like, I was driving down the road one day thinking about, what, I feel like I've really achieved quite a bit. Like I'm a business, I'm helping people, blah, 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 blah. I feel like I've got a good reputation in my profession. And then I was thinking, why is that not enough for me? Mm-hmm. And I remember like doing a word one time that you had to come up with words that were your stronghold and writing lazy. like I'm lazy. I don't do enough. I don't work hard enough. And my friend looked at me like, are you the most, the first time somebody had actually said, that is not true of you. That is not true of you. And you need to stop thinking that you're not good enough, because you are. And that really got me thinking, and then realizing that, like, who am I to decide I'm not good enough when all I have to do is embrace it?
Yeah. And so this is reminding me of your story you shared in Body Kindness, the Who Am I? So hopefully everybody who's listening has the book and is already reading it. So turn to your pages. But if not, or they can kind of reread it and revisit and make the connection. But I definitely appreciate you sharing your story. It was very important to me to, especially where it fit in this idea of where you belong, and that our need as humans to connect, and that, yes, that includes connecting to others, bonding with our children, connecting to people we care about and friends, but that there are also other forms of connection that we don't necessarily see, like spirit and God. And I know you are one of my most spiritual friends, and I wanted a really important story that I could share with people that showed the power of that connection in transforming your life and in giving you strength when you feel weak. So I really appreciate you giving that story. I don't know if there's anything else in particular around your experience and sharing that story, or anything that you might want to share.
Well, I mean, I remember driving down the road, and I feel like I was on the way to a doctor's appointment, actually, while I was pregnant. Go figure. And I think that's when I was like, how is nothing enough? How is nothing enough for me? Are my clothes not good enough? How is my body not good enough? I was pretty confident with my body and happy enough with it, but it was really about achievement. And, how have I not achieved enough? And I remember asking God, like, what is it going to take? And that was one of the times that I ended up in the hospital. And I feel like that really started about a 4 or 5 year season in my life of, loss of friends and family members, and it was like boom, 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 boom. It's like it would not end. And then learning that we were moving to Las Vegas, and for me, my connection and my assurance of the connection of God and grace is that I am in Las Vegas today, and I did not come kicking and screaming. There is a God, because I did not. My husband got a job offer here 4 years ago, actually, when I was pregnant. Vegas full circle. And then it was a really rough time for us, because I was definitely not on board. And then fast forward, and here we are, and having tremendous loss in my life in Memphis. Very close friends, very young friends, neighbors, family members, and then, having kind of a rough pregnancy, and then making it through all of that. I mean, making it through all of that and being happy about this new change and this new start was evidence that my connection with my friends like you, because you know the down and dirty and everything, and connection with you, and then having people, I had a small group at church that just held me through it, because one of my best friends was dying at the time I found out we were moving. And so it was a really hard combo. So I made it through, and here I am. And so many amazing things have happened in my life in just this past year. And it's just a testament to having those connections and having people support you and being kind to yourself. I mean, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, what you went through would have pushed anybody in a major downward spiral, and would make optimism difficult, resilience difficult. And when you're trying to practice body kindness, it would feel like, trying to accomplish what feels like an impossible task. But when you are able to remember that you matter and you do have needs, right? Part of my value is to be here for my daughter, right? Mm-hmm. That's important. So even though I'm feeling this way, I know that I have a valuable role to be here for my daughter. Mm-hmm. And so in someone who at 8 calls herself Leslie A. Nobody, is somehow as an adult able to reach out and say, I need help. I need you to help me, is quite a magnificent transformation to go through in your life.
And I think it was the realization too that the healthy, authentic, compassionate me had not been driving the bus for myself. And that was a really important realization. And honestly, I think what pulled me out of a lot of that and just kind of kept me or helped me make it through that time was really being kind to myself. And I mean, and too, it's like I used my spiritual group, my ladies in I had a Bible study group, the people that just, held me accountable to myself and to taking care of myself and that's when I really started, kind of being very purposeful about exercise. Exercise has always been something I've enjoyed when it was something that felt like it was mine. There are times in my life where I didn't feel like it was mine, but when I was a gymnast, it was just something I loved. And I talked to my husband, who's a researcher, and, he knew that I was kind of struggling, and he was talking about, there's some pretty interesting research about this type of exercise and mood. And I was like, well, sign me up. And there just happened to be this new gym around the corner from my office. And I really started going from a place of self-care because it truly made me feel better. It wasn't like I must go to the gym. It was, I'm going because this makes me feel good. It was self-care. And that was hard because there are days where you don't want to go, when you feel like you're just putting on a show and you're getting through day by day, and then you go anyway. And putting the one foot in front of another, and I kept going and I kept feeling better, and you knew what I was doing, and other people knew what I was doing, and then here I am. And when it was time to move, I was okay. I was okay to leave kind of the open a new chapter.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a really important point, the idea of reframing. I think we're constantly reframing away from diet culture and toward these are choices that I make for myself to enhance my life and improve my life. So like you can't control if 50 million, billion, trillion people around you are exercising for whatever body focused diet culture reason. But you are at a point in your health and well-being where you realize I need this for me and for a very important purpose. And so that's part of how I'm taking care of myself and showing myself kindness, of taking care of this body that has important work to do for my family and clients, et cetera. And it's just a constant battle, especially around things like exercise and food, for it to not mean weight or appearance focus.
Yeah. And the gym I go to is, they talk about weight and they talk about calories. And I was so fortunate at the time, the gym that I was going to, and I went to this one coach, and she would always ask me questions like, what do you think, Leslie? What do you think, Leslie? Because she knew what I did. And I talked them out of doing a weight loss challenge at that gym, because one of the managers was like, hey, will you help with this weight loss challenge? I'm like, no, I will not. Will you maybe do some type of healthy behavior thing? Because I'm all up in that. And then she opted out as a gym out of the weight loss thing. So I'm spewing my non-diet stuff everywhere, even when I'm working out for my mental health.
Yeah. Well, and that's another really good point, right? That we don't control all the things around us. And yes, your safety is the most important thing. You felt comfortable enough in your mindset and your well-being and your purpose for exercise that even if they spewed stuff, that it didn't have to be yours to absorb, right? That you could say, this isn't helpful to me, so I'm going to leave it and I'm going to focus on the real helpful thing.
Yeah. I feel like, at this point in my life, and even when I was younger, growing up in a dieting family, is that I have been gifted with a pretty amazing filter, and I can really repel a lot of ridiculousness. And it's something that I really hope to help other people really, really find, is that filter to just, cut through the crap literally and hope it doesn't get stuck on you. So
yeah, that's like, in the main the Why We Need Body Kindness video, the video that came out with the book, and watching your interview, and you're like, people are going to have to get pissed off. I mean, you had the best, this is a load of crap and I'm good enough. Like the best, that's exactly that filter. You need to bottle that up and sell it, because we all need that. So let's transition. This has been really good so far, but let's take the listeners now through. So we're moms and we've got babies, and they're getting up there where they start to get interested in food. And tell us what happened in your life around that.
Well, there's so many stages of that. Cece was a pretty great eater, and I started out not using baby food with her. And I wasn't sure if it was because I really was like, this no baby food, baby-led weaning approach is amazing, or am I truly lazy and I'm not going to make baby food?
We're a little bit of both.
I'm not making baby food. I don't want a pink blender. We're not going to do it. So I had a really great friend who brought me the book Baby-Led Weaning, actually like 2 weeks after my little girl was born. And I looked at it and kind of saw what they were doing, and we really embraced it. And within the first, 2 to 3 weeks, it was just easy. I mean, she ate what we ate. Of course, we, thought about appropriate textures. And again, my husband's a researcher, so he comes home with a binder, which is what researchers do when there's a new topic. You should have seen him when I was in the hospital. It's like a 4-inch binder on preterm labor.
He was like, let me scrub in, doctor.
He's like, I've got my highlighter and my binder. We're ready to go. So, so we were all in and had a lot of support. And, one day I even came home from the office, and, my really great friend Kelly and my husband, were already feeding her like, soft pears and eggs and avocado. I'm like, you couldn't even wait till I got home, and so it really just happened and was super easy, for us. I mean, there were times when I wondered, are we doing the right thing? But then you just use your brain, and you're like, people have lived thousands and thousands and thousands of years with just real food and not baby food. So it was kind of a no-brainer for us, and it worked. And then I, spread it around to my friends.
I.e. me. So I was like 6 months behind you, and was definitely interested in, like Audrey started being interested in food. Like she stopped grabbing like car keys and putting them in her mouth, or non-food items. And she started like, I remember you said, let her sit in your lap and see what happens. And she could sit upright. And then she'd kind of like start to basically grab a cucumber and stick it in her mouth. And that was, when you said, as long as, she could sit upright and showed an interest in food, that she might be ready. And I loved when you told me about the approach. I mean, for me, I do think it is exactly what you said. It's the simplicity of, they're going to explore based on what you eat anyway, that their main source of nourishment is, as they're weaning, right? Their main source of nourishment is still coming from, breast milk or formula, or, whatever you're doing. And when you taught me, like, they're learning how to build skills that they don't necessarily get if you're pureeing their chicken and pureeing, things that don't need to be pureed. So elaborate on that a little bit more, just like the idea of like the art and science behind it, the benefits behind this type of approach, besides time saving.
Time saving and anxiety, lessons of anxiety. So the person who wrote the first book and actually coined the term baby-led weaning was Jill Rapley and Tracy Marquette. They wrote the book Baby-Led Weaning. It was a fantastic resource. It was the first resource that I had. And it made a lot of sense that you can, babies gag, that's normal. normal. A lot of parents confuse that with choking and freak out and say, forget it, we're going to baby food. But I think it's really important for parents to know the difference between gagging and choking. Gagging is normal. It's a safety reflex to keep food from being swallowed that they're not ready for. It looks scary. Their eyes may water. They may cough. They may spit out the food. That's totally normal. A gag is when the airway is, a choking experience is when, they can't breathe. So the airway is blocked. They might not make any sounds at all, or they might make a wheezing sound. Their eyes may water and they might just kind of freeze. So that's a choking event. And so what the research suggests is that luckily there's a really amazing study going on in New Zealand that did put out some research that we included in the book about there's no difference in choking across the feeding strategies that you use or the feeding methods that you may use. It's really about certain foods that are at higher risk. So we take people through how do you modify that? And while you're letting them, say, eat a piece of steak or avocado or a slice of egg or whatever, they're learning to control the food in their own mouths. And we're allowing them to self-regulate, which is that innate skill that we tend to lose as we are being fed, possibly, like just 4 more bites in this jar, we lose that. And then, that's part of that feeding development that carries us for a lifetime. When I worked at the University of Tennessee there was a child development center in our building, and we did a lot of observation and took people that we were training down there. And I remember seeing people really use the division of responsibility, which Ellen Satter, and if you don't know Ellen Satter, go to Ellen Satter Institute and look up all her great work. We've built on that in the book as well. But I remember seeing people literally spoon feed, like push the food in their mouth to get the jar finished, which is really teaching a child not to trust their own internal regulation system. And on the flip side, I saw someone actually using a spoon, and then when the baby pursed their lips or pushed it away, they were responsive of that. So they were allowed to use their self-regulation. So it's really about whatever method you choose. Some people do a little bit of spoon feeding, a little bit of, kind of baby-led approach or a whole food approach. It's really about being responsive, but because I did it with my child, I do love using the kind of a baby-led feeding approach because it's foods of the family. And, most families don't just sit down to a big bowl of purees. So, it's foods of the family, and it helps increase, kind of whether they're going to be an adventurous eater or not, increase varieties, quick progression of textures, which could actually reduce the possibility of them being picky later. And we're so fortunate. It just, the cards could not have lined up any better for us. The cards, Las Vegas. I don't know how that happened. But my sister is a feeding specialist. She's a speech therapist. And then we were very fortunate to have the feeding doctor, Dr. Katcherau, critically review our manuscript too. And so we were super happy. And, with all the research, and Jill Rapley actually did as well, who is the person who coined the term baby-led weaning. So we were super happy with the research that's going on that we could include and the benefits of doing this. We truly believe that this method supports body trust and a healthy relationship with food for a lifetime. And we really want to take the whole family with them. It's just not about baby's first bite. It's about the whole family coming on board with them.
Yeah. That's exactly how I feel, basically. So I was very lucky to receive an advance copy to read and review. And the book is just amazing. Beautiful colors, absolutely adorable photos of kids eating. So you can see the cuteness, of course, and also the realities of this is going to be a little bit messy, and that's okay. And as they grow and develop, it gets less so. But I mean, between that, the pull quotes that they're like these motivational coachy tips, like exactly an inspiration right when you need it. Just really easy to review, illustrations and drawings that I think help make a point, and then useful resources from lists and charts. And of course, wonderful recipes too. So it's kind of like part philosophy and mindset with this foundation of we are born to eat. Kids can self-regulate if we don't intervene.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
with, force eating or withholding food, right? Or,
Exactly.
diet culture stuff, right? So we might not be putting our 6-month-old on a diet, although I wouldn't put it past our society. But, this approach that you're starting when they're developmentally ready, 5-6 months, right? That phase is kind of on the short side, and it continues to grow, and born to eat is something that's going to follow them, through the rest of the family. But especially when you're just starting out with them, you have the most amount of questions and the least amount of confidence. And so to me, this is the book. You buy it for your pregnant friends, you give it as a gift to a friend who has a newborn or they're getting started with the feeding process. They're definitely going to get the most benefit and help out of it. But even if they're in the toddler stages, I mean, the images that you show for how to cut the fruits and veggies so that they're easy for their developmental skill, I think is genius as well. So it's amazing. You're amazing. I think everyone needs to just go out and get
it. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. It goes through 3 years, and that's really, you've got that birth to 3 time. You'll hear a lot of people say the first 1,000 days. You've got that crucial time to build preferences and, helping them get used to so many different types of things. This is also a time where you might see dramatic weight fluctuations in a child. So their weight might go up. You might see them, bump up a couple lines on the curve or come down. And hopefully it provides a tremendous amount of reassurance for parents in that is normal. And children have their own curves. And sometimes, and this is one of the places that we utilized our wonderfully supportive feeding doctor, Dr. Cacciarel, to help support us in helping the parent advocate for their kids when they're working with a physician that might not share their same views, which is going to happen. And it was just super helpful. And we've given so many stories of even in my own office where, say, a mom came in, I don't want my kids to eat these foods are bad. And, I believe it's our responsibility and privilege as parents to teach our kids how to deal with all foods, regardless of their nutritional value, in a healthy way. Because if you don't, I just did a talk, last week, and it was like, if you don't teach them how to do that, this particular mom, her kid, I witnessed him at a party eat 5 mini cupcakes and do shots of Sprite. So regardless of what getting his fix before, mom saw him. So regardless of what we think of a food, I think it's our job to teach kids how to deal with those foods in a healthy way. And so we incorporate foods that I'd rather my kid not eat every single day. We incorporate them so they're less of a big deal, because when you make food a big deal, it might always be a big deal.
Yeah. And I mean, when you say foods you rather our kids not eat every day, I instantly thought of My Girls and Nutella and chocolate chips. I mean, they love it. And so it is around the house, but if they had their druthers, I would put it with everything. Right. And it's, to me, what we do is, we don't talk bad about it. We talk about how we do enjoy it. And we talk we do what we can as a family to encourage, a pleasure and enjoyment with food, which is a form of, mindfulness and being present with our mindful eating. And we'll try to kind of run certain, we'll try to turn it into, so at their ages, 2.5 and 4.5 is, how can we make this exciting for them, adventurous for them? So we might pair it with different fruits, or we might try it with, wheat toast one day and then a waffle on a different day. And so to your point, it's just not a big deal. And I can always say, oh, well, today we're having eggs, or today we're having eggs with fruit and Nutella. And so that I can kind of determine how often I'm going to offer it, right? So then I don't need to be afraid. The child doesn't need to be afraid. Because you might think you're doing the right thing. I just turned down this we want to TRUPS Girl Scouts through cafeteria foods and basically say, eat this in college, don't eat this in college. And I'm like, yep, no, not the right time, not what I would do. But you recently had an event. I saw a meme you did with Cece, and it was like, back off or something. So tell them about that, because I think this is along the lines of what we're talking about.
So it's so funny because she obviously teaches me stuff every day. It's very humbling to have a child. But so this was like two things happened at once. So she said something about something had too much sugar, and I'm like, oh, whoa, what?
Like the record stopping.
Yeah, I'm like, whoa, pull over, let's talk about this. And she knows it. We talk about food, and I'm like, Cece, and sugar is part of food. It gives your body energy to do what you have to do. Food is food. And then my friend tells me to eat my growing foods first. I'm like, Cece, all foods are growing foods. So, and I said, so what are you going to say? We actually have a lunchbox card that you can copy and write and laminate and put in the lunchbox that basically is really nice, saying my kid's knows how to honor their body. And if you have questions, call me. And if you want to open a container for them, yeah, thanks. But that's actually from Dr. Rao. It's from one of her books. So Cece has used that before. But what we ended up talking about is, I asked her, I'm like, Cece, who's in charge of nutrition information? Of course, me, in my nutrition righteousness would thought that she was going to say, you are, Mom. And she said, I am. And
Ooh.
I was so happy, even though I thought she was going to say me. I was so happy that she was like, I'm in charge of my body. And I'm like, you know what, Cece, you're right. And when somebody tells you something about your plate or your lunchbox or whatever, you really need to tell them to mind their own business. And we came up together with mind your own plate. And so when her little friend, who still says stuff to her about growing foods or whatever, says something to her about a food on her plate, she now knows to say, you need to mind your own plate. And that's it.
Yeah. And this is to me, a good example of if we do want to try to diet culture proof our kids, a healthy and appropriate boundary we could set, right? So this is how we do it in our house, and here's why. Talk to them, make sure they understand, and knowing that you can't control your friends around you, but you need to have something to say that basically says, back off.
And there's nothing wrong with teaching kids how to be assertive. I mean, that would have really helped me early on.
You wouldn't be Leslie A. Nobody at 8 years old.
I know, I'd have been snapping at somebody, but that would have been so much better. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with telling people or teaching kids how to be assertive, especially when there is a belief, or you have a belief or value that's being imposed upon. And especially when it's diet culture, mommy does get a little righteous about it. So I really don't want that to be an impact. I know it's going to be, so I'm trying my best to give her the tools she needs to have that good filter to let some of those things really bounce off her when she's, say, in kindergarten or first grade or whatever. Because I know there's some really unfortunate stuff out there. And if I had a dime for every kid that I had in my office that was there because of their health class, I'd be a rich woman, which is sad. So we've got a lot of work to do, but I feel like if we can help families kind of diet culture proof their kids, at least give them a really good filter, we have a good start. And people do have to get pissed off. Parents have to get angry enough to arm their kids with the tools that they need. And the one thing my sister said not that long ago was when her little girl came home saying something, she said, the one thing I wish that I wouldn't worry about is hurting other people's feelings. You can say what you need to say about what is good for your child and other children when it comes to this tactfully, but don't worry about hurting people's feelings, because what's more important? Your child and how they're growing up in this culture, or this person's feelings. And you don't have to be a jerk, but I think we all need to be assertive about it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good point. So just to summarize the food part of it, right, in this body kindness for families thing, like you have a family mindset and philosophy that works for you, and Born to Eat empowers people to figure that out and gives them this tools and forms to give to doctors and teachers and all this wonderful stuff. So that's kind of like your foundation. But we need to be aware that we live in a diet culture. So our kids are going to be out there and experiencing things that may not be in line with home philosophy. So you teach and model the sort of, this is how we do it here in our house. And then you give them a skill for how they can handle when things aren't in line. And it's not about trying to change the other person, but it's about staying true to what matters to you. Even if like their friend is following some sort of irrational rule that's unhelpful, helping your child see kind of like, let me do me, and this is okay because I trust it, because I trust my body and I trust my family, and I can advocate for myself when I need to. And I don't need to worry if other kids are doing something different. Does that about sum it up?
That's absolutely true. I mean, each family gets to decide their own theory or philosophy around what health looks like for them. And that's how it should be. The only place where that gets sticky is when you have someone who influences your child, like a teacher who your child really looks up to, is when parents really do have to step in and say, this is not what we believe. And the good thing about the diet culture and what we're doing in our family, kind of the Born to Eat approach, is it's evidence-based. If you want information about how BMI and this nonsense is harmful to kids, I got it for you. So, I mean, I think it's like when it's other kids and their families, everybody has their own, they get to decide what health looks like. When it comes to someone who is heavily influencing your child, I think we all have to stand up and be assertive about what is really going on in our culture.
Mm-hmm. Any other surprising ways where diet culture may even impact infants and toddlers? Because I feel like what I hear from a lot of parents, friends, or clients, it's, they kind of talk about like, oh, well, this is the only time we talk about like, chunky thighs being like a good thing, and so they might not see infants and toddler stages as stages where diet culture can still have an impact.
Right.
So anything surprising that you would want to share, kind of like, be mindful, be aware, and really kind of think through what you're going to do, because this is a potential harm.
Well, if you have a onesie or someone gave it to you, or you're going to give it to someone that says, does this onesie make my butt look big? You should burn it.
Yeah.
You should definitely burn it. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, even when my little girl was, she's such a sponge, like all kids are. Even when she was little and somebody would make a really, not nice remark about their own body, just because when you feel like something isn't right with your body and you voice it out loud, you're planting the seed of body dissatisfaction and body distrust, and that starts very, very early. And I remember when my little girl was probably only 1, she was at a parent's day out, and the lady, they colored ice cream cones. And I remember when she handed it to my husband, I think we picked her up together, and she was like, don't let mommy see this. She's a nutritionist. I'm like, and, I do a little spite, and I'm like, next time I come in here, we're all going to have ice cream cones. But,
I'll take 2.
Yeah, I know that's another whole episode, but but yeah, I think we can just be really tactful, because there are going to be things like, you've got people in our book, we talk about the conventional wisdom granny as a joke, but actually it was modeled after that lady who said, "Don't tell mom about the ice cream." But we have people, young people, old people, whatever, that will say things like, "Your baby's fat," or "Your baby's too skinny," or "You need to feed them this," or "You need to feed them that." And we have to be able to say, this is what our family chooses to do. And in the book, we do give some letters that can be used, and that can be used when you're encountering people like that, where you actually do need their support in some way.
Mm-hmm. Right. So with respect to the body image component, like what we hit on in the very beginning, just reinforcing now, words matter, actions matter, even if you're not exactly where you want to be or you think you have a lot of work, knowing that, anyone who comes in contact with your kid's potential influencer, and we're not saying, you have absolute control over every little thing, but you can have awareness, you have control over your own actions, and the family unit. And then you could call out when something's not in line with the family unit, and then best equip your kids. Even things like when Barbie comes around, and helping them understand that, like, that's not real. It's a doll. It's not real. That, like, things like that.
We talk about make believe all the time, the time. Like, that is make believe. So it's just not real. And we're already, like, she doesn't really know the word illusion yet, but she understands make believe is not real. And so we use that a lot. And I will say, I'm super proud of the book, and it's been years in the making. But I love all of it. Chapter 10, it talks about it's a family affair. And we wrote kind of 10 ways born to eat parents can support body trust in born to eat kids. And it's really kind of even if you don't believe something about yourself, it's crucial that you don't voice it. You don't say something negative about your body, but it's just really giving some tips for parents to really support that kid in their own body trust and self-compassion, even if they're not quite there yet.
So important, because I think that that's the thing. We are all on a journey, and we start to feel like, oh my gosh, this is again, another way we might be inadequate because we're not ready enough, and your point is, wherever you're at, you are enough to be a good role model. And it's about, coming up with what you want to do, how you want to act. And even if it's hard, being fully committed to doing that, because this is for your well-being, it's for your child's well-being, and that's what you care more deeply about. Any quick kind of tips? Food, body images are big body kind of things, but also like around, I know you're a sports nutritionist, and exercise anyway, and it's, but just even kind of like, it's like the way, kids and movement, just any sort of idea for what body kindness and movement is like, whether it's in your family or what you recommend to people who might be thinking about how that fits into their family's life.
I will say, if your kids see you doing fun movement, they're going to want to do fun movement. I enjoy lifting weights. So being strong is something that makes me feel like a powerful person and a powerful mom. And I lift weights. And when Cece was really little, really little, she would be in the bouncer or, doing her own play. And I would lift some weights in the house. I had some, little weights around. And we were at the pool, and she picks up these floaty weights. And she pulls them up like she's doing rows, and she goes strong. And I wish I had that on video, because it was really this moment where I realized that she was really watching me, and that she got the message that is in my head, which is like, this is about being strong and being able to be capable and take care of her. And, we ride bikes together, and exercise isn't necessarily a bad word in our house. It has been in my life at times, but I think just saying, staying active and doing really fun things and making it fun, playing soccer, jumping up and down with a video, we have dance parties all the time, and that is exercise. Like we'll put on some type of crazy music from whatever the most recent movie is, and we'll do dance parties. So I think just showing your kids that movement is enjoyable, and it doesn't have to be lifting weights. It doesn't have to be running. It just has to be movement where you're enjoying what your body can do for you. I think that's super, super important for them to see. If they see us enjoying our bodies, then they can do it for themselves.
Yeah. And I do think we brought it up in the beginning, but it's coming full circle. It's the idea of modeling. Like you
Absolutely.
are modeling mindsets, behaviors, and even that, we might face where our child has some sort of difficulty. Somebody makes a comment, whether it's a peer or an adult, they could feel hurt, they could feel pain. We can hope that our child trusts us enough to bring that information to us so that we can help them through it,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's something, and honesty is, I think, something really important too. If I make a mistake or say something that I, didn't mean to, or spell something, now that she knows what I'm saying, she can catch on to spelling. That's a risky game. She'll say, what do you mean by that? Is that bad or is that good? And then I'll have to explain that, mommy said this and I didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry, I was wrong. And I think one of the most valuable things as a parent, and even when you have a kid who's older, like I've had clients that put their teenage kids on diets and they were wrong, and they said, you know what, I was wrong, that was not right, I'm sorry, and let's work through that together. I think honesty is really the best policy in pretty much everything.
Yep. And being accepting your own humanness, right? Like I can be vulnerable and I can feel guilt around making a mistake, but if I'm also high in self-compassion, I can also be vulnerable, own my mistake, apologize for it, but all through that self-compassion, because we all deserve it. And if we give compassion to someone else, we have to give it to ourselves.
Absolutely. I mean, it really is about just being honest and owning mistakes and, learning from it. And I mean, having that self-compassion piece, because there's no learning from it if you don't.
Mm-hmm. Right. I love that. And then here we are in the present day, both authors, moms of crazy kids, and still very good friends.
It's crazy. It's like, here we are, you, Wendy Jo, and myself, 4 girls later and 4 books later.
That's crazy. Wendy Jo carrying the brunt of the book business, which bless her, because I know we joke that our books were like, another baby, except longer gestation.
Totally.
Oh gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting today. You're always an inspiration to me. Where can others get in touch with you? Where is the book available? All that good stuff.
Okay. Well, my personal website is leslieschilling.com. The book website is Born to Eat Book. Born to Eat on social is pretty much everything is Born to Eat Book, at Born to Eat Book. I am easy to find on Facebook and Twitter, Nutrition Leslie. Instagram's Leslie Schilling, pretty easy to find. And the book is available pretty much anywhere books are sold, but I've mostly been watching it on Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah. And leave a review. Those reviews are so helpful. I know as an author, it's like I have to hold back how often I'm going to check to see if anyone else has read and left a review. So definitely get the book. I love it, and it's very useful to me, and I'm going to be getting it for those I care about, and you'll see how great it is when you get it and hold it. It's a great size, beautiful colors and weight. It's a super high quality, which you don't always see in this type of book. It will be well used, well loved, and then as you realize you love it, leave it a review on Amazon.
Thank you.
All right, Leslie, thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And that's our show. Thank you so much for listening. I would love if you could take a minute and leave a rating and review on iTunes. I know they don't make it very easy, so I have a few quick tips for you. First, launch the Apple Podcast app, and then you're going to click the search button to enter the name Body Kindness, and you'll find my podcast. You'll see the album art. And when you click on the album art, there is going to be a button in the middle at the top. It's called Reviews. Click that. And then when you scroll to the bottom, you will see an option to leave a review. And so you'll click that button and go ahead and write your thoughts. I also would love ideas for future episodes. You can email me, Rebecca@bodykindnessbook.com. Again, that's Rebecca@bodykindnessbook.com. I love chatting about the show and how it's helpful. And so keep those emails coming. And also, if you are not yet completed with the e-course, don't forget that's a free resource for anyone who's interested in practicing body kindness. If you visit bodykindnessbook.com and click on Get Started, just enter in your name and email and you'll get instant access. I'll see you there.